Sorry about that. Totally out of camera. This is the continuation of making the rest of the album. I did an album and I showed it last week, and what was the name of that album? It was a family one, The Story of Family by the Cartabella Echo Park paper line. So I remade it, but I did the page video where we did it, and I decorated mine though with the Christmas, because I mentioned in the video I'd be moving on to Christmas. So I wasn't going to do the hinges and the cover, but I decided I'm going to do just kind of a general hinge video and a general cover video and show you how to figure out your sizes for whatever album you're working on. So for this particular size, this page was an 8x8. So it'll work this way with any page that you use. So if your page is only 7 inches long, however long your page is the width that you need to cut your 12 by 12 piece of paper. So I cut this at 7 7/8, and that is the easiest way to figure it out. Then there's no guessing, and you should have just that 1/8 of an inch at the top for your paper to slide in and out. And that's how you want your hinge to be. You don't want a bunch of room. You don't want to have to miter or cut the corners of a hinge. You want it to fit perfectly in, because you want the strength of that whole hinge. You don't want mitered corners, because there will be some of the score tape that doesn't catch. So you want to make sure it'll go in. It'll be a little tight, but it'll go in still pretty easy. So you're going to cut it. First, I started a 1/16 of an inch to make sure how that fits. If it's too tight, then cut another 1/16 of an inch off. So you should end up with, like I did here, 7 7/8. If you're making a 6x6 mini album, you're going to cut it at 5 7/8. Just take that 1/8 of an inch off whatever length your page is. That's the size that you're going to make for your hinges. So the next step you're going to decide is how much embellishment is going to go on in your album. Are you going to make a lot of pockets and flaps? And we did make a lot of flaps that I showed you. One in particular will be this page, and it's your heavy page. You have a heavy, good size waterfall on this side because it's 6 inches wide. And then on this side, you have like a pop-up page. And that really adds bulk. So when you're adding that much bulk, you need at least a 3/8 of an inch to a 1/2 of an inch gusset. The 1/4 inch gussets, let me tell you, it's not going to work probably with any of the mini albums I make and any of the tutorials, because I put too many flaps and things on my page. Now, if you're just doing a basic page, no flaps, no pockets, excuse me, you can get by with just that 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to bring the camera over to help you see a little better, because the ScorePal scoreboard has wonderful markings. This is the way you're going to do every single hinge. You're going to start out, it's 12 inches long. You're going to start out at 1 1/2, and then you're going to score it at 2. Ah, no, I just told you wrong. Let me back up here. Let me just fix this. This is another beautiful thing about the Cartabella paper, because it didn't do any cracking, or I can pretty much, do you see that? I can work that back out. Voila. So you're going to go, 1/2, and you only want a 1/4 inch. So 1 3/4. So if you even make a mark on your scoreboard to remind you, start at 1 1/2, 1 3/4. Now we're going to have to go 1/2 of an inch. So that's 2 1/4. And another way, sometimes I get working and I forget, and I'll just go 1 2 3 4. There's 4 tick marks in between, basically. So if you're having one of those stuck moments, you just go 1 2 3 4. There's your 1/2 inch. And 1 2 3 4 again, or in this case 2 3/4, because you want 1/2 1/2. And now I'm going to do 3/8. 3/8 is 3 of those marks. So 3 1/8. And don't be afraid to go ahead if you want a full 1/2 inch gusset. The only difference is your the back of your book, your spine, hinge, whatever. That's going to determine the thickness of your book. Is your 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, or 3/8 of an inch gusset. So there we just did our 3/8. Now we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch again. Now we're going to want 1, 2, 3, which is at 4 1/2, our 3/8 of an inch gusset. Then we're just going to go 5, 5 1/2, and then our 3/8 of an inch gusset. Now, to count your hinges, you go in between your 1/2 inches. So we have 1 hinge, 2 hinges, so we're at 3 hinges right now. So we're going to go to 1/2 inch. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 1/2 inch again. And that gets 7 1/4. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 hinges. So we're at 7 1/4, and we want half, so 7 3/4, 8 1/4. Now, this is where you want to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If that's your 5th hinge, you don't want a 3/8 of an inch gusset on this side. You don't need it. You just want like the first where we did a 1/4 inch and 8 1/2. I always start with the 1/4 inch and end with a 1/4 inch. You'll see why. I don't like to have a big lip. Also, again, it'll make your spine that much wider. And if you're going to do 6 hinges though, of course, from the 8 1/4, go 1/2, 1/2, and then 1/4. I only do 5 pages in my books. And if some of you are new to my videos, the reason being I do a lot of craft fairs and I sell my books in the store. The thing with selling, when you put 6 pages in, it's going to cut into your profit. And if you only do 5 pages, not only does it cut down your time a little bit so you can make more albums, because that's the whole thing, we want to be able to make more albums. It's going to cut down the amount you have to make, and it will cut down on your supplies a little bit. So my friends for hinges are the score tape. That's your best friend to make a hinge. But before we start there, you want to go ahead now and just start with this 1/4 inch. And you will notice one thing, I do not use any tie back. And you know, that is personal preference, but I don't see the need for it. On an average, I make 3 albums a week, and I have never had one come apart yet. And if you're going to put tie back here, I'm going to tell you right now, when that hinge tears, tie back is so weak, flimsy, it's not really weak, but it's not going to hold that hinge in. So again, weigh that, especially if you're paying for tie back. Is it really necessary? Not if you're using a good quality cardstock. And this Cartabella, yes, it's a little more pricey, but let me tell you, it's absolutely worth it. And some of these albums become, they're going to become heirlooms. Your children or yourself, or you're going to have photos that will last forever in these, and you don't want your albums or the paper you made your album with to break down. So I'm just basically grabbing my 1/2 inch right in the center, and I fold it, and then I'm going to fold it back and forth. And then we get to our last one. And then here we have that 1/4 of an inch. So we've got it all broken up, and you should have a nice accordion fold now. I'm going to go ahead and take my ruler. I'm just going to set it not quite the whole width. I usually go to there. There's a little orange line. I don't know if you can see it. Then I take my box cutter. Just slice that right off. Turn it over, and now you're ready for the score tape. So you can put your 1/4 inch right along the top. You know, and that's one thing when I started making mini albums, I thought there was a big secret to figuring out the size of my hinges. Okay, hold on. I'm going to put, so I've got my 1/4 inch. I'll come back to that story. Then we're going to leave a space. Tape. 3/8 of an inch will go right on top of there. That is your gusset. Then I skip a space, and then I go to the next one, and I just keep going like that. No one really explained to me that there was a very simple way to figure out what size hinges you need. They kept you guessing in some of their tutorials. That's when I thought, I'm not buying any more tutorials. They make it sound like every single album has its own special, you know, hinge code. It doesn't. It's a very simple math, 1/8 of an inch shorter than what your page is in length. So I just stopped looking at tutorials and just started making my own. That way I also taught myself that there's a very simple way to figure this stuff out without having to buy a tutorial. But until you make a whole bunch of them, please, I'm not criticizing at all because you're watching my tutorial. But I want you to be able to sit down and make a book without having to watch a tutorial to find out what size you're supposed to be making. Okay, so we're going to remove just these middle sections of score tape. Not this top one, just in between where we're going to put our gussets together. Because if you take those off, which I did in another video, I ended up with a sticky mess, but it still worked. So now we can just go ahead with the bone folder, push our hinges together, and we'll just keep moving down, and you'll see how your gussets are going to start coming together very nicely. Depending on your cardstock, I wouldn't advise you using the side of your bone folder like I am. This is the only cardstock I've ever purchased where I can do that. And it is available in my store. And the nice thing is I live close to most of the warehouses. I live close to Cartabella. I live close to Graphic 45, Basic Gray. Bow Bunny is just like 10 minutes away from me. So I can get this stuff in fast, and I keep it in stock for you guys. All right, so that's going to be our 1/4 inch. So we want to make sure that will fold over here. And please, if you ever need any help with any of your albums or instructions, I am so easy to find on Facebook. You can go right to my store at Country Craft Creations in Hooper and message me, and it comes to my phone, and I will get right back with you because I don't want you stuck if something isn't making sense. Don't hesitate to scream out at me and say, I need help. Okay, now what we want to do is we're going to remove all the tape on the back, or the tape covering on the back. And I really don't recommend any type of wet adhesive. It looks great, it'll start out great, but it's going to harden, and I'll tell you what, it's going to come apart. I don't care what glue you use. It isn't going to work in the long run. Okay, we're going to just fold one of our hinges over. Now make sure you're leaving that 1/4 inch gusset. Okay, I call that a lip. Now on this piece, you're going to have to put on some more score tape because it's going to overlap. And if for some reason you didn't cut enough off, go ahead and cut it to go across the back, and it doesn't have to be perfectly straight because this part you won't even see it. Remember to push back so you get that lip right there. Now, before I start putting tape on anything, just so we don't waste any more, I like to take the page. If I can find the end here. Oh, absolute wrong end. Wow. There we go. Let me open the pocket. Now I like to place my page. Now see how nicely it should fit, and you don't have to cut off the corners of your hinge. Have you ever butchered your hinge and kept cutting it and it still doesn't fit nice, and then it sits sideways or it's crooked and you don't match your pages up? Well, you won't have that problem if you do it like this. So I'm just getting hung up on something. There we go. So it's going to fit. I like the way it fits, so we're good. I'll put my page aside. And now we just have to finish taping up the back side. For that, I like to grab my 1-inch tape. And I can get about 5 albums, 5 or 6. So I'll use this on the covers. So it's quick. A little harder to work with, but it's quick. And just bring that down, make sure none's sticking out. Now, that is one thing I do first, is make my pages. Then I make my hinge. Because to be honest with you, if you try to make your book, the book without making your hinges first, because maybe you haven't decided on the size of gussets, it's not going to fit properly in the spine area. So that's why I wait, then I measure it. Now I know I need to cut my chipboard at least 2.5 so that this will fit nicely inside of that spine of the book. So I'd like to get this all ready though. And I just put my score tape. Now I like my score tape to be a little closer to the top, because there's times your page just doesn't go down all the way, or maybe you have extra flaps and you don't want it to go down all the way. If you push it too far down on the gusset and you have a lot of flaps, you're going to end up ripping up the flaps on the sides. If you've ever done that and you bend the paper, that's because it's too close to the bottom. And then if it's up a little higher, you're going to see the score tape along the edge of your page. So I just bring it up closer to the top. And again, if you use glue, eventually it will harden and your page will harden. It will become kind of rigid. Like I said, I don't care what kind of glue it is. Glue is glue. It does not stay pliable or, you know, soft like your score tape will. Okay, so there's our hinge. Make sure your score tape's down. It's ready. We have a nice lip right here that'll, the first page will sit. I don't like to put my, you know, wings underneath my paper on the books because I've had it crack in the middle, and I've also had to rip off, you know, the cover. Something had happened to my inside cover, and then I wasn't able to fix those wings on my hinge, and it looked terrible, and so basically the whole cover was ruined. So that's when I started doing it this way. And you can now set this aside, And that is our hinge video. So whenever you're watching one of my videos from now on, I will always send you to my hinge video unless I'm doing a hingeless page or something different. And you will know now this is your go-to hinge video. That is how you'll make them for every single book. Just take off 1/8 of an inch in the length or the width, and then it always stays at 12, and you are good to go. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll be glad to help you. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.